So I am Deborah. I support fundraising for both Young Barnet Foundation and our members. And when I support funding, that means I signpost you to funding opportunities, which I try and make sure are relevant and accessible. So I usually do checks on them first rather than send out blanket emails. And I also offer funding support in terms of bid review, looking at putting together like a project. So if you wanted some help scoping out a project and looking at whether that would be suitable for a fund, or if you've drafted a review, a bid, and you want me to review it and give you any sort of additional information, that's what I'm here to do. Or you have specific projects that you're looking for funding, and I can try and find some sources for you to apply to. So please use me. I'm a free resource, and that's what I'm here to do. So that's who I am. I wanted to talk about the John Lyon Shaft funding. That's the School Holidays Activity Fund. They have released that as a funding pot. It's open now. And I've had a conversation with them just so I can give you very clear guidance on it. So what some of the rules that have changed for that fund is, even if you've been funded for the last 3 years, usually they make you take a year's break. This year they won't make you take a break, so you can apply in any case, even if you've been funded previously. The second thing is even if you have applied and been unsuccessful, usually you have a year's wait before you can reapply to get funding. This year you don't have to. So if you've been rejected previously, you can still apply for the Shaft fund this year. You do not have to wait. A caveat is they are part of the London Community Response Fund, so they can see what else is being funded. So you cannot apply for double funding. So if, for example, you got the London Community Response Fund for 3 months worth of funding that covers you over the summer period, don't then apply for Shaft funding. Or if you do apply, you must make it explicitly clear why you're applying for more funding. So if you applied for a youth worker and a youth worker salary for 3 months, don't then apply for the same salary within the Shaft funding. So that's some initial information. They've advised that only apply for the fund if you are running youth activities consistently over the summer. So if you usually run a 1 hour after schools program, unless you can put together a good case for then running a full day's 6 weeks of summer holidays activity, just think about that application. Just think, are you in a position to move from your normal provision to a summer holiday provision? Because that will massively be considered. They're really looking to fund people who have got a track record in delivering summer activity programs. But like I say, if you run a youth club all year round and can transfer that, and they can see that, that's not a problem. It's just if it's something totally new and different. The next thing that John Lyon say is you must make sure it comes through in your application that you understand the MYA guidelines. So that they said that is absolutely key and critical to their funding you, that you have to be able to demonstrate that you understand the MYA guidelines, and you will be asked to contractually sign up to commit to delivering under those guidelines. So that's another key thing, as well as putting risk assessments in place. So if you want to go to a trip to the park, you would have to have a risk assessment for that activity. If, you know, whatever activity you're doing, you need to have risk assessments for. And lastly on that, they said, put a timetable of your delivery in. A successful application will have a timetable of precisely what you're looking to do. And I know that's a real challenge in the current environment, given we don't know, you know, everything's a moving feast, but that is likely to get you the funding. So there's some of the things that you need to have a successful application. They've increased funding to £6,000 for this year to account for things like extra cleaning, extra measures, extra staffing you might need, because usually it's 4,000. So feel free to contact me if you want support with that funding. That's
Sorry
the main...
to interrupt, Deborah. Can we just also here at this stage mention the letter, the local authority letter?
Sure. Go on.
So another requirement of the John Lyon's School Holiday Activity Fund is that before the application is approved, and these, as I understand, Deborah, and you'll correct me, these applications are being reviewed and approved on a first come first served basis. So really, if you are looking at this fund, the sooner you get it in, the better. And that also, on top of the criteria that Deborah just mentioned, is a letter from the local authority effectively giving you permission to deliver in public space. Now, a couple of you have got in touch with us already, and what we have drafted and we have given to Deborah Davis to, and it has to be from a service lead, a service head or above, is to have a single point of contact who approves any Young Barnet Foundation members' activity, subject to the details of that being worked out with the council. But Deborah Davis, we've drafted that. We've left that with you. But anything that can be done to turn that round as quickly as possible, because we will really struggle to get any organisations in Barnet funded without that tacit support. Or if Faith, I think you're on the line too. I don't know if Deborah Davis.
So yeah, I am. Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
No,
yes, I did get that last week from Janet. So it's already been mentioned. And we've got a meeting later on today where we'll look at seeing if there's a workable way of doing something along those lines.
We really appreciate that. Thank you. Deborah is an amazing resource. Please use her, because we are very lucky to have her expertise, and she's been hugely successful in helping our members secure funding. So I'm going to leave it there. Deborah, do you have, over and above this John Lyon's Fund, is there anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, I do want to reiterate that it is first come, first served. So you do need to get your applications in quickly. We do expect the London Community Response Fund Wave 3 to have a provision for summer activities. It was due to be launched last week. It hasn't. We suspect it's being held back by this lack of guidance, because we know that there's an element in there. We're advised there's an element in there for summer holiday provision as well. So I will get that flag to you the minute it gets released, but that is sort of a waiting release. And Pete is going to talk a little bit as well about Space2Grow funding opportunities on summer holiday activities. But please be in touch if you want any support on this.
Thanks, Deborah. I'll hand over to Pete, who hopefully has got some good news for us.
Yes, and just one other thing. It comes into Space2Grow, what I'm about to go on to. In order to apply for John Lyon's charity funding, you have to be a registered charity. So this is where the Space2Grow, we're trying to put together a pot which is going, well, we're putting together a number of pots coming out that will be launched in the next month or two. But I'm going to talk about one, which is basically what we're calling our August Activity Fund. It's to complement really what Deborah's just talked about with John Lyon's. And we have got £40,000 in that pot. So it's not a huge amount of money, but again, very similar to the John Lyon stuff and what we're expecting from the London Community Response Fund Wave 3 is it is for activities during August. It's going to be a simple application form with fairly simple monitoring and evaluation, and we will launch it shortly. There will be a short turnaround time on the deadline, probably about a week and a half to 2 weeks, but it, again, is going to be fairly short on the application. And then we will make sure that that is confirmed to you by the third weekend of the third week in July for work across August. So again, we've been holding it back, waiting for clear guidance, but we're hoping that it will be some activity funding for face-to-face support in various ways. Now, we're conscious that John Lyon's funding is for only for charities. So within our membership, we have some who are just constituted groups, etc., and we will try to complement. We're not saying we won't fund charities, but we're going to try and complement. We're going to work and talk to John Lyons. Obviously, we've got a good relationship with them, so we're not double funding. But basically, there is a pot of funding which we put together from a couple of sources. So there is £40,000 going to be launched. Hopefully, by the end of this week, we are dotting I's and crossing T's, and hoping for some clear guidance, as we all are, which would just have made it easier. But again, we're going to make it very similar in the application form, etc., so that hopefully you're copying and pasting stuff in. We're not going to ask you to write reams and reams. Please, as the person who has to sit and initially go through it, I don't want to know about what you did 3 years ago. It's about what will you do for this month, and how have you got those young people who can attend. So it's a really everything you need. The feedback through also doing some of the Barnet community response fund stuff is that people tend, if they're not careful, they want to tell you how great their organisation is, and we know how great you are. What I don't need to know is stuff that happened 2 years ago or X or Y. I want to know, it's the elevator pitch. I've got to look at it quickly, and then the independent panel, when they go and read it through, they've got lots of applications to go through. It needs to be short and snappy and catch your eye. So that's the hint. Really, as I said, we're going to try to make sure it complements John Lyons stuff, so there's not double funding, etc., and there's many activities across the borough get funded. There are some other Space2Grow stuff coming, but I'm not going to talk about it now. This really is just to say there is an August activity fund. There will be £40,000. We're finalising the details, and they will be out with you shortly.